Hey guys, Steven Martinez with The American Dream. I just want to say a big thanks to all our supporters and fans. It's because of you guys that we're able to keep growing. Having said that, please don't forget to follow and subscribe. It means a lot to us. That's what helps us keep growing. And also, I hope you guys enjoy the next episode. Hey guys, welcome back to The American Dream podcast. I'm here with another special guest, Dr. Nathan Bryan. Thanks for coming, brother.
Brother, good to see you.
Man, I went bowling the other day, and every time people shake my hand, it kind of hurts. But I try to just remain strong.
Well, I was trained by my dad to always have a firm handshake.
Me too, but I went bowling. I guess the way I bowl, it was just so sore. Anyways, for people that don't know Dr. Nathan Bryan, obviously you're clearly very successful, but what brought you to who you are today in terms of, the trajectory from growing up to now?
I grew up in small town Texas. Grew up in a small town, about 1,000 people, and it was always, had it instilled in me we had to work hard and be determined and have self-discipline and do the right thing. So that was, I guess, ingrained in me from day one. And, graduated at the top of my class, went to University of Texas, got a degree in biochemistry, and then quickly realized that the job market for a bachelor's degree in biochemistry wasn't great. So I knew I had to go and further my education. Mm-hmm. And so from there I spent 4 years at LSU School of Medicine, where I got a PhD in molecular and cellular physiology, then went and trained in Boston. But really, my entire professional career has been really research around a single molecule called nitric oxide. Mm-hmm. And that's really, the past 30 years has really defined my professional career, because when I started in the field in 1998, a Nobel Prize had just been awarded for its discovery, and we knew it was an important discovery in medicine, but we didn't really know didn't understand everything about it, especially how to restore its production naturally in the human body. So that's been what I've been focused on for the past 25 or 30 years. But, had to overcome a lot of hurdles and obstacles and opposition in the field, but here we are.
I love that. So why specifically medicine? Usually people have kind of like a backstory as to why they choose what they're doing. What made you want to go specifically to that field?
I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was a typical small town high school boy. I made good grades. My counselors advised me to go into engineering because I was really good at science and math. So I enrolled in the engineering department at University of Texas, and I was naive, a country boy going to the city, and go, what do engineers do? And they go, well, they build bridges and buildings and things. I go, that's not really what I want to do. And so I entered the College of Natural Science and entered the biochemistry degree program. And, for me, it was always just the curiosity. And in the basic sciences, the one thing I love about the sciences, and especially the medical sciences, is you have complete intellectual freedom, right? I can contemplate or I can ask any biological question, any important question, and then I can design experiments to answer that question. Mm-hmm. And you always get an answer. It may not be the answer you're looking for, but you always get an answer. Mm-hmm. And I think what I've found in my 25 years of research and discovery is it's the answers that you aren't expecting that are the ones that change the course of history. And that happened to me. I mean, we were looking for things and it didn't happen, and many times we saw what we didn't expect.
Mm-hmm. So with nitric oxide, specifically, what gravitated your attention towards that?
Well, when I entered the program at LSU, so part of that curriculum is the first 2 years, it's all didactic lectures, right? You get to learn the biochemistry, anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, physiology. Then after those 2 years, we went off and did research rotations. And we had to find kind of an area of research in that department of molecular and cellular physiology that we had an interest in. Mm-hmm. And so we were required to do at least 3 rotations.
Okay.
And so I rotated through a lab that was doing kind of what's called ischemic preconditioning and gastroenterology type of work. I did some work in a lab that was really focused on DNA and telomerase, the ends of the chromosomes, and later on a Nobel Prize was awarded for those discoveries. But then I worked in a lab that was studying nitric oxide. They're trying to figure out how do we restore the production of this gaseous signaling molecule. And I just thought it was an interesting science. It's a very complex chemistry and biochemistry. And my mentor at the time was really disciplined and kind of a hard-nosed guy, and I had high expectations, and at that time in my life, that's exactly what I needed. So I naturally gravitated toward that, and it was a really fruitful and productive environment. And, we were very productive during that time. I think during my PhD, I published 5 peer-reviewed articles, and it was awesome. We were making discoveries after discovery, and that really lit my fire. Uh-huh. And I continued on that field of research now going on 30 years.
So before we dive more into the book, you mentioned your mentor. How important was he throughout the trajectory of your career?
You know, I credit all of my success in academia and, you know, all the discoveries we made with the direction and the mentorship by Martin Felix, because he was, you know, really changed the way we thought. Because in school we're taught about this scientific method, right? Develop a hypothesis, you know, and go through the scientific method. But Martin was different. And he always told us, your research program should be curiosity driven. So you don't have to form a hypothesis. Find an interesting clinical observation and something that the medical field doesn't have an answer for. Complex medical things, multisystemic disease. And then bring that back, model that in the lab, understand the basic biochemistry and physiology. And then once you have an understanding of that, then you can go back to the clinic. So it's not this bench to bedside that we're taught in school. It's you have to understand the clinical presentation of the patient, take that to the bench in the research lab, model that, understand what's going on at the cellular and molecular level, and then once you have an understanding of that, then you can go back to the patient and go, oh, well, this is how we fix this. This is how we explain these set of symptoms. And unfortunately, the way medicine's practiced today is you've got, it's all siloed, right? The cardiologist only interested in the heart and the blood vessels. The gastroenterologist are only in, you know, the gastrointestinal system, the neurologist in the brain. But nobody looks at the human as a complete picture. And I think that's where we've gone wrong. And the beauty of biochemistry and physiology is we have to look at the patient as a whole, because everything is connected.
So when you were writing the book and you're speaking about nitric oxide, to what depth and what discoveries did you find that this was a molecule, correct?
It's a molecule.
Would help enhance or amplify humans?
Well, there was already a rich body of literature when I started in the field in the early 2000s. A Nobel Prize had already been awarded. So a Nobel Prize is given to discoveries that change the face of mankind, right?
Wow.
Leave mankind.
Yeah.
And it's the highest accolade you can receive in basic science. And so we knew that nitric oxide was important. And we knew it was the signaling molecule that's produced in the lining of the blood vessels that dilates the blood vessels so it improves blood flow and circulation, it improves exercise performance, it improves sexual performance. So we knew what this molecule did. What the field didn't understand was really have a clear understanding, how does the human body make nitric oxide? What goes wrong in people that can't make it? And then how do we fix it? So those were the three kind of fundamental questions that I set out to ask in my own independent research career. And today, you know, we certainly understand how the human body makes it. We know what goes wrong in people that can't make it. And many of the discoveries that I made in the research lab now reveal that we can restore the production of this molecule.
So why do humans make it, or how do they stop making it?
Well, they make it primarily through two ways. There's an enzyme in the lining of the blood vessel, and we call that the endothelium. So the cells that line all blood vessels throughout the body make this molecule, nitric oxide. And when you make it, it dilates the blood vessel, it improves tissue oxygenation, it reduces inflammation in the lining of the blood vessel. And so it addresses all aspects of health and longevity. And so when we understood in the 90s that the older you get, the less nitric oxide you make.
Why is that?
Well, there are a number of things. And I think what we're finding is that it's really the Western lifestyle. It's our diet. It's our lack of physical activity. It's nutrient depletion from the foods that are grown in America today. It's exposure to toxins.
Wow.
It's known risk factors, smoking, high blood pressure, diabetes, all the known risk factors for cardiovascular disease either disrupt nitric oxide production or they're a consequence of nitric oxide or inhibition of nitric oxide production.
So if I said, what are 3 or 4 things that you would tell someone to completely just stop that would be bad for you in the essence of producing this, what would you say?
Well, there's 3. There's top 3. Number 1, mouthwash.
No mouthwash?
No mouthwash. And
oh, wow.
We and others published on that probably almost 15 years ago. Because we understand now the microbiome, the Human Microbiome Project has been completely mapped. The microbiome in the mouth, the gut, the skin, all over the body. So this microbiome, the bacteria that live in and on our body, outnumber human cells 10 to 1. So the bacteria that live in and on our body are there to do things that we as humans can't do. And so when we destroy the microbiome through antibiotic use, through oral antiseptics, through fluoride in our toothpaste, that destroys the microbiome, shuts down nitric oxide production. And what we're finding is that people who use mouthwash, they have an elevation in blood pressure Because when you can't make nitric oxide, you lose the vasodilatory effects of that, and your blood pressure goes up. And you lose the protective benefits of exercise.
And that's any sort of mouthwash too, like alcohol or alcohol-free mouthwash?
Anything that says antiseptic. So when you see the commercials for Listerine, it kills 99.99% of the bacteria.
Wow.
Believe them. And that's not a good thing, by the way. You know, there's a reason we don't take an antibiotic every day, right? No physician would give you an antibiotic and say, take this for the rest of your life. Because now we know that it destroys the gut microbiome and it causes systemic disease. We have to support the microbiome. We can't destroy it. So if you're using mouthwash, you have to stop. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is fluoride. Fluoride in your toothpaste is an antiseptic. And the major problem is there's fluoride in most municipal water supply. Why do they put fluoride in our water system? To kill the bacteria. Mm-hmm. Well, when we drink that water, when we bathe in that water, when we cook our food in that water, we're killing the microbiome. And people get sick from it. And now there's data showing that fluoride lowers IQ in kids.
Wow.
So get rid of fluoride, stop using mouthwash, and then the other big one is antacids.
Okay.
Data showing now that antacids, specifically things like Prilosec, Prevacid, Nexium, omeprazole, pantoprazole, these completely shut down nitric oxide production. So they shut down stomach acid production, but kind of a side, kind of collateral damage of that is completely shutting down nitric oxide production. And now there's clinical data showing that people who have been on these PPIs for 3 to 5 years have about 40% higher incidence of heart attack, stroke, and Alzheimer's. So you want to know how important nitric oxide is when you completely shut down its production, you get a heart attack, you have strokes, and you get Alzheimer's.
Wow.
And those are the chronic medical conditions that the globe is faced with. Number 1 killer of men and women worldwide.
So that's what not to do in this case.
Now,
what would you do to support it? What's something that you could do?
Well, we have to the body's a lot smarter than we are, right? We got to get out of the way. So if you stop using mouthwash, get rid of fluoride, stop using antacids. Now the body is actually designed to promote and produce its own nitric oxide. We can enhance this through elimination of sugar and carbohydrates in the diet. We can throw in some more green leafy vegetables, which are enriched in what we call inorganic nitrate that the body can then convert, or the bacteria in the body convert that to nitric oxide. And we can get moderate physical exercise. Exercise is medicine because it stimulates nitric oxide production. And so, you know, those are cost savings, right? Mm. If you eliminate mouthwash, get rid of fluoride in your toothpaste, and get off antacids, and then we just eat less sugar, less carbohydrates, a balanced diet in moderation, and we exercise 20, 30 minutes a day, then that's priming and stimulating our body to make nitric oxide on its own.
In your opinion, when you say diet, there's so many things, and I think nowadays you hear diet and like there's keto, there's 3-day fasting, there's the juice cleanse, there's all sorts of diet. What's the perfect diet in your opinion?
I don't think there's any perfect diet that's for everyone. I mean, we're so different and individualized that you have to find a diet that works for you. But I base everything I do based on data, right? And so what I find in the medical and scientific literature is that intermittent fasting is probably the most beneficial thing you can do. It turns on longevity genes. It induces mitochondrial biogenesis. It increases the metabolic flexibility of the human. So the data are very clear. A 16 to 18 hour fast every day.
As soon as you go to bed, you start that clock.
Well, no, I think what I do is I eat my last meal at usually 6 p.m.
Okay.
And then I don't eat again until noon the next day. So that's 18 hours of fasting.
No water, no coffee, nothing.
No, I drink water and coffee, but I don't break the fast. Mm-hmm. So in the morning when I wake up, I have supplements that I take. I take some amino acids. Nice. They don't break the fast, but it prevents protein breakdown. Because during that fast, you don't, depending on your body type, I mean, you start breaking down glycogen first, then you start breaking down fat, and then if you don't have glycogen or fat, then you start breaking down protein. You don't want to break down protein. So what I do is I take some amino acids in the morning to prevent the breakdown of protein. So I don't lose muscle mass and I don't lose bone mass. So I think that the data is very clear. And anybody can do that, right? It's just discipline.
Of course.
And then the other thing, I mean, for me, I'm not a big fan of these extreme diets, straight carnivore, straight vegan. Yeah. We have to get our nutrients from a diverse source of foods. But what I do think, and what I think it's corroborated by the literature, is that sugar is bad. Sugar is a toxin. It's a poison. It sticks to things. And enzymes, when you're understanding biochemistry and enzymology, these proteins have to undergo conformational change. And sugar's sticky. Right, if you've ever spilt a soda on the countertop and you come back the next day, it's sticky. Yeah. Well, when you have diabetes and elevated sugar, blood sugar, Everything sticks together. Platelets stick, monocytes, neutrophils, immune cells stick to the lining of the blood vessel, causes inflammation. The sugar sticks to hemoglobin, and we can measure that as hemoglobin A1C as an accurate measure of long-term glucose control. So we have to eliminate sugar, and we have to eliminate sugar from our diets, from our supplements, and from anything we're consuming. So low glycemic index, completely carb-free, or, everybody's different. Right, if you're metabolically active and physically active, carbs are fuel. And athletes, fuel up by eating carbs before a race or for a marathon. They need it because they're going to burn it. But the average American who's a couch potato, the worst thing they can do is eat carbs, because what's going to happen? You don't burn it, it's stored as fat. And we have a pandemic, a global pandemic of obesity.
Wow. I want to touch base on two things. One is, reverting back to the intermittent fasting, I have this question for myself actually, because my buddy does intermittent fasting. I try to, but I only have water and coffee. But I put sugar in my coffee. He's like, nah, you're breaking your fast. Is that true? If I put sugar in my coffee, I'm automatically breaking my fast?
I mean, it depends upon, your metabolic flexibility. If it depends on how much sugar.
Okay.
Right. But what I do is I use honey.
Okay, that's what I've heard too.
So honey's more a low glycemic index, and it's just a touch. It's just a touch to kill the bitterness of the coffee. And I drink 1.5 cups of coffee, but it doesn't raise my blood sugar.
Okay.
So if whatever you're doing and you get these continuous glucose monitors, you can see what's elevating your blood sugar and how long that particular beverage or what you're doing increases your blood glucose levels.
God, I'll start subbing out the sugar for honey.
Yeah, no, and it's great for allergies, for seasonal allergies. I mean, you drink the local honey and it basically primes your immune system and eliminates seasonal allergies.
That's awesome. My second question was sugar. I saw a thing the other day on social media. It was saying how the number one thing that humans are addicted to is sugar. And I think I can speak for most people too. And my girlfriend's dad actually cut off sugar. He's also a doctor, by the way. And he hasn't had sugar in like 10 years. And I think that's easier said than done. Like, he won't even eat a banana because it has sugar in it. How do you stop eating sugar? And if you want to stop eating sugar, is it cold turkey? What's the process to that?
It's an addictive disorder.
Yeah.
Sugar is an addictive substance. In fact, it's probably one of the most addictive molecules out there. So it's just like any addictive disorder. Number one, you have to have discipline. But here's what we're finding is that the longer you can go without sugar, an 18-hour fast, if you're used to eating sugar and high carbohydrates, then those 18 hours is going to be miserable for you, because you're going to get hungry, you're going to get hunger pangs, and you're going to crave a donut and sugar and all that to appease the body. But you just got to fight through it. And what I found is that the sugar pangs, the hunger pangs go away over time. So then usually once a month, I'll do a 24, 48, 72-hour fast. And when I first started that, it was awful. I mean, because you feel so hungry that you feel like you need to eat, and you just have to push yourself through it. I drink water. That kind of suppresses the appetite. But after the first 24 hours, the hunger pangs, the cravings go away. And your body responds almost immediately. When I do a 72-hour fast, I'll drop 6 or 7 pounds over those 3 days. Just from burning fat. You start to see the tone in your muscles, and it's life-changing. And then when you can look in the mirror and see those changes, you're motivated. And that's something that I don't care what diet you're on, you don't see those. And that's why there's these yo-yo diets, because people get on them, they don't have the discipline, they get off of them, and then they rebound and they gain more weight than what they started with.
How healthy would you say it is to do those 3-day fastings, like once a year, once every 6 months?
Everybody's different, and you have to, what are you trying to achieve, I would ask you. So if you're just wanting to increase your metabolic flexibility, then, maybe once a quarter. If you're trying to lose weight and you've got 50, 100, 150 pounds, you need to do it maybe once a month. Because it's during that time that 3 days of a water fast that you're completely reprogramming your DNA and increasing these longevity genes and completely changing the metabolic profile of your cell.
So if someone, let's say nowadays too with kids, I've noticed, I've seen videos where parents are giving kids horrible processed foods and all this. Someone watching, I guess, who wants kids and wants to have kids, who doesn't understand the impact of giving these kids, like, hey, let me just take the easy way out. Here's a honey bun, here's this, here's processed orange juice. What can you tell them so they really understand the importance of what they're doing to their kids?
Well, it starts in utero. The mother that's carrying a baby has to be well nourished. And you got to make sure that you're delivering to that growing baby all the nutrients it needs for full development, so that when you deliver that baby, it has what it needs to do. But yeah, you have to breastfeed. I mean, formula is horrible for a baby. I mean, I understand some mothers can't breastfeed. Their milk doesn't come in and they have other issues. But breast milk is nature's most perfect food. And there's data now showing that breastfed babies are protected from diabetes, hypertension, disease later in life, as opposed to formula-fed babies. So it starts there. But when you start to become a toddler and they're eating real food, you have to eliminate the sugar and the honey buns, the donuts, and give them good quality proteins, good quality fats. And really it comes back to the basics. A balanced diet in moderation with very limited sugar.
So I have another question for you, and I'm really, really big on health and wellness. I'll do sauna, cold plunge. I take sea moss, magnesium, L-theanine, resveratrol. Yeah, I take a lot of stuff. I'm really big on that. I want to talk about dairy for a second.
Yeah.
Are we meant to drink regular cow milk, or is that something that you'd say we're not supposed to really drink milk from animals?
Personally, I don't drink milk. There's some people, because I have the dairy intolerance.
Me too.
I think that, and again, everybody's different, but I think it all originates when we're babies, and babies typically will spit up, will throw up, and then you take them to the pediatrician, they want to give them an antacid. And when you give a baby an antacid, so you can't break down proteins into amino acids without stomach acid production. And in babies who are given antacids, when they drink milk or when they eat food, they can't break down that protein into amino acids, so you get these peptide fragments that are absorbed across the gut, and we develop antibodies against them. Now you've got a foodborne allergy. And it all goes back to giving antacids early in life. So I think everybody's different. I mean, some people can tolerate milk and their microbiome adjust based on that. But here's what I noticed. If you eliminate dairy from your diet and then you drink milk or eat dairy, it's going to cause enormous gastric distress.
Yeah.
Because that microbiome in your body, you've completely destroyed it and given it something that it's not used to seeing. But, again, I think it's individualized. But personally, I don't drink milk, and I don't encourage my kids to drink milk.
I'm the same way. So I know you mentioned nitric oxide in terms of how to prevent it, how to support it, and there's certain things we could do, but I know you mentioned you yourself also created its own supplement that can help. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I got into this field because, number one, I wanted to understand the mechanism of disease to the extent that we could intervene and fix it. And so this 25-year path really on nitric oxide. My overall objective, even when I started on this, was I was trained in drug discovery. We wanted to develop safe and effective drug therapy that we could bring to market so physicians could give to their patients and make them better. Early on, because nitric oxide is a naturally produced molecule, and we figured out how to restore the production and actually produce this molecule in a solid dose form, really recapitulating nature. Years ago, I brought this to market as a dietary supplement because we're finding that if you're low in vitamin D, what do? We give you vitamin D.
Of course, yeah.
If you're low in nitric oxide, now I have a way to give you nitric oxide gas.
Wow.
And so the only way to do this is through what we call an orally disintegrating tablet. So nitric oxide is not a pill you can swallow. It's not a tablet you can take. It has to dissolve because it's a gas. And so I created this technology. When you put it in your mouth, it's activated by your saliva, and we're releasing therapeutic amounts of nitric oxide gas that's absorbed buccally. Awesome. It goes systemic. And so we brought that to market as a dietary supplement. We're also developing it as drug therapy. So I've got a separate drug company called Bryan Therapeutics. We're taking this through the FDA and developing drugs for ischemic heart disease. We've got a drug program for Alzheimer's. And I make a topical drug for diabetic ulcers and non-healing wounds. And it's going to I'm convinced, I've seen this so many times, and it started with my dad, who's had non-healing wounds. He's a paraplegic from a car accident in 1984.
Oh, wow. And he started taking nitric oxide.
No, he had a non-healing ulcer, decubitus ulcer, back in 2014 that was non-healing. It almost killed him. He was septic from it. And the wound care docs, there was nothing they could do for it. So I started giving him nitric oxide. I developed a nitric oxide topical, and it healed the wound.
That's incredible.
And the docs were like, we don't know what you're doing, but this is unlike anything we've seen. So then I felt I had an obligation to bring this to market because there's 65,000 Americans that die every year in nursing homes from infected wounds. And to me, that's completely unacceptable. So I developed a topical nitric oxide. We have it on the market today as a skincare product or beauty product for fine lines and wrinkles and things like that. But we're taking that same technology and developing it as for drug therapy for diabetic ulcers.
I love the passion and the story kind of behind it that drives you to it as well. So it really is life-changing in essence.
No, it became very personal because, I mean, my dad, was 76 years old and, been in a wheelchair for 40 years and had a number of comorbidities. He was diabetic, high blood pressure. I mean, you name it, he got it. And there was nothing, the doctors kept giving him more pills. And, I'd go to him and one day he's on 15 different medications. And he's awful. And so I started to work with him, and really he was kind of my first guinea pig, and said, okay, we're going to start weaning you off these prescription medications. We're going to change your diet. We got his oral cavity cleaned up. We got his dental health managed. And then we started, healing his wounds, and we got him off all prescription medication. And, for a guy who's rolling around in a wheelchair for 40 years, his coronary arteries are completely clean. His angiogram is, his heart is incredible. I mean, so I've seen it firsthand. And now I've, people contact me every day with chronic health issues where the conventional medicine has failed them, and I just make simple recommendations, and they utilize our product technology, and it changes their life.
So for someone who, let's say they're young, and they want to take care of themselves, what's a few things? Obviously, nitric oxide's huge, but for someone that perhaps can't get their hands on it, not yet, what would you recommend for them to take? Supplements, vitamins, anything like that? Something specific?
Well, again, it's individualized. We're in this era of personalized medicine. So what I'd recommend is just go get a micronutrient analysis. It's a blood draw, and you can see what nutrients you're missing. Because a lot of people, most Americans take supplements, but most of the supplements they take are not absorbed. They just urinate them out. So it's just wasting. Your body uses what it needs, and then it excretes the rest. So you have to figure out what's your body missing. Do a micronutrient analysis. But if you look kind of at the data, 75% of Americans are deficient in magnesium. So take magnesium. Most Americans are deficient in vitamin D. We need our vitamin D at 80. The labs will say anything above 50 is normal. 80 is where we need to be. And magnesium is involved in like 800 biochemical reactions. So if we don't have enough magnesium, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, including making nitric oxide.
Wow.
And then iodine. 95% of Americans are deficient in iodine. Because how do we get iodine? From seaweed or from seafood. And most Americans are not eating seaweed. Right? So we have to supplement. So those are kind of the basics. Iodine, magnesium, and vitamin D. Those are, I say, just get labs. You don't even have to check for iodine because Americans don't get iodine from their diet. So I take 12.5 milligrams of iodine every day. My kids take it. Everybody I know, I recommend iodine. And then make sure you're taking magnesium. And then, you can do blood labs and see what your vitamin D level is. If it's around 80, then you're fine. If it's below 80, then you need to supplement with vitamin D.
So then aside from the vitamins, obviously exercise is important, but is there anything else that you would recommend that someone could do to further along their health benefit, like, for example, sauna or this or that?
Yeah, I think what I've learned in 30 years of science is that people get sick for two reasons and two reasons only.
Okay.
Their body's missing something that it needs, a nutrient deficiency, or it's exposed to something toxic. So if you address those two things, the body heals itself. So we've got to supplement, micronutrient analysis, and then we've got to figure out what is in our body that's toxic. And that can be fat-soluble toxins like herbicides and pesticides sprayed on the food we eat. It can be environmental toxins. It can be pollutants from the air. It can be heavy metals. And so then we have to figure out how do we detoxify the body from that. And so for heavy metals, you got to chelate them out. Things like spirulina, chlorella, bentonite clay, glutathione, that will help clear metals from the body. Fat-soluble toxins, it's a little bit tricky, and that's where sauna comes in. So what I like to do is give people 750 milligrams of niacin, which causes a flush. Your ears are going to get red and you're going to get a little bit itchy, but that's causing lipolysis, and it's excreting and mobilizing those toxins. And then what you have to do is have a binder on board. So before you get in the sauna, take charcoal, bentonite clay, or an algae product, and then I sit in a sauna for 170 degrees for 30 minutes.
170?
170.
That's crazy.
Like you're going to sweat. You're going to sweat, and you're going to detoxify.
Yeah.
And take deep breaths, because the main routes of excretion and detoxification are deep breathing, sweating, urination, and defecation. So you've got to have good bowel movements. You've got to drink a lot of water, fully hydrate, urinate out the toxins. We got to sweat. Most Americans don't sweat, right? We live in our air-conditioned house. We get in our air-conditioned car, go to our air-conditioned office, and we don't sweat.
Funny.
And people are toxic. So I love sauna. Then from the sauna, I go from 170 degrees to a 4-degree cold plunge for 3 minutes.
Now, speak to me about the transition. I heard it, but I forgot. Why is that contrast so vital?
Well, it's called contrast therapy because it's really, and it induces what's called hormesis. It's this brief period of shock to the body that completely rewires your metabolism. And so specifically, the cold therapy is turning white fat into brown fat, right? So we're inducing mitochondrial biogenesis, and brown fat is enriched in mitochondria, so it's more metabolically active. And so that's how that transition occurs from that contrast therapy. So when you're in a sauna, you're fully dilated because your body's trying to excrete the heat, so the body doesn't overheat. And so then when you go from hot to cold, the blood vessels immediately contract because now we're trying to preserve heat in that cold environment. So it's almost like resistance exercise for your blood vessels, right? And all blood vessels are surrounded by smooth muscle. So just like when we work out and do resistance training, we're building muscle and making those muscles more adaptive and more responsive. So the contrast therapy is working out those blood vessels, going from completely dilated to completely constricted.
Wow.
And then your body adapts and it completely changes the metabolic flexibility.
So I know we're talking about toxins in different ways. I also want to talk about when you said toxins, I immediately thought alcohol or like vaping or cigarettes. Obviously, that's a big factor as well. How bad is it, or is it bad to drink alcohol?
Now, I think, again, we got to look at the data. Moderate alcohol consumption, periodic alcohol consumption, is cardioprotective.
Yeah.
And there's this whole phenomenon called ethanol preconditioning. So moderate consumption of alcohol can precondition the myocardium to where if someone has a heart attack and a complete occlusion of the coronary artery, and they've had alcohol before that, the injury to the heart is less than those who didn't. It's called ethanol preconditioning. But obviously, if you're consuming too much alcohol, it's a burden on the liver. It causes liver cirrhosis. You get an upregulation of all these other enzymes that basically, and your body is overburdened trying to detoxify that alcohol. So periodic alcohol consumption in moderation, I think, is fine. It's just like anything, everything in moderation, right? But when you overdo it, no, it's very toxic and it's damaging and it creates a lot of social problems and it's a wreck.
I'm really big on your body kind of tells you, right, when something's wrong. I believe the body responds in certain ways. Maybe you're lacking sleep or a deficiency of some sort. I just had kind of a train of thought just now when you were saying your story, and you mentioned the heartburn. A lot of people, it seems like it's something normal that people kind of go through now with life. Isn't heartburn normal? Or is that something you could have prevented way back?
No, look, our body talks to us every day. We just have to listen. Problem is most people don't listen until they have a serious health situation, a heart attack, stroke, or they're motivated by fear and they're reactive instead of proactive. Yeah, heartburn and acid reflux is your body telling you don't have enough stomach acid. Right? So let's think about gastrointestinal physiology. When we eat protein, when we eat a meal, we have to have, so whether it's plant protein or animal protein, humans are never designed to incorporate foreign protein to make human protein. Right? So we take plant protein or animal protein and we break it down into amino acids. We transport those amino acids into cells, and then we make human proteins based on those amino acids. And so if you can't make stomach acid, you can't break down proteins into amino acids. Number 2, you can't absorb nutrients like magnesium, iron, selenium, chromium, iodine. And so the body's response is, if you put something in your body that your body doesn't like, it tries to get rid of it, and you try to expectorate it.
Wow.
Right? So if we eat some E. coli lettuce, what's the first thing that happens? We start throwing up. Then as it progresses through the GI tract, we have diarrhea. It's the body trying to get rid of whatever's toxic. Same thing happens with heartburn. If we can't make enough stomach acid and we can't break down those proteins into amino acids, then the body tries to get rid of it. It goes, I don't need this. I can't utilize it. And that's reflux. So it never made sense to me as a biochemist and physiologist why in the world you would give an acid suppressor to someone with acid reflux.
Yeah.
You need acid.
Yeah.
So what I tell people is take apple cider vinegar. You need to acidify the lumen of the stomach.
That's something good to drink in the morning.
It's acetic acid. It has a pH of 2. The normal pH of the stomach is between 1 and 2. So if you have acid reflux after a meal, take apple cider vinegar before, acidify the lumen of the stomach. Now when you eat, you can break down, you can digest it, and the GI tract works normally.
Mm-hmm. I've always been big on, at least in my opinion, for me, it's before I go to the prescription stuff, I want to find the natural cure of it, because
that should be the thought process.
Because I feel like our bodies would react that way. Am I correct? Having said that, for someone that's going through symptoms, let's say it could be a cold or a flu, anything like that, instead of them going straight into NyQuil, Dayquil, or anything over the counter, what would you recommend to have a natural cure?
Let the body do its job and get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I'd never give a fever suppressor. A fever is the body's natural response to fight an infection. Mm-hmm. If we take something that suppresses a fever, we've handcuffed our body to kill the infection or the pathogen. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are times if your fever gets above 103, approaching 104, then you could go into febrile seizures, and that's a critical situation. Mm-hmm. But never give a fever suppressor. Never give a cough suppressant. A cough is the body trying to get rid of something in the lungs. Mm-hmm. And when you suppress that cough, you don't clear it, and now you're going to develop pneumonia, pulmonary infections, and you're going to compromise the ability to fully oxygenate your blood. So for viral infections, if you need an antibiotic, by all means take an antibiotic. Go through the 7-10-day regimen, but then you got to restore that microbiome, take prebiotics or probiotics. But you just got to let it run its course. Mm-hmm. But what I do before I feel my body getting run down, and I haven't been sick from probably a viral or bacterial infection in more than 20 years. Wow. Even all during COVID, I never had COVID. And I was on an airplane every week and I never wore a mask. Mm-hmm. Because when I feel my body being compromised, I take proactive measures. I go sit in a sauna. I fully supplement my body. I up my vitamin D. I take colloidal silver. I spray it in the nasal passages. Mm-hmm. I'll do IV ozone. I'll go work out and supplement and fortify my body. Mm-hmm. But I listen to my body. But if my kids get sick, I don't give them Tylenol, Advil, anything to suppress their fever. In fact, I'll put them in the sauna. I want to help your fever. I'm going to help you get that fever, that body temperature up to where you can clear that infection, especially if it's a respiratory virus. You get in 170 degrees and you breathe in that air, viruses and bacteria can't survive in that environment. Yeah. So it's helping the body do its job. 100%.
So let me ask you a question. I'm kind of curious now. And I love this topic because I'll speak with my girlfriend's mom for like hours just on health and wellness. And I'm really big on it because my optimal goal in this life is to be at the highest peak of performance. So let me ask you a question. So let's say if the perfect human was to exist, kind of like that guy, I forgot his name. He sold Venmo or PayPal, and he's put in so much, hundreds of thousands of dollars into his body. I forgot his name.
Oh, not Elon.
No, Johnson, Brian Johnson?
Oh, Brian Johnson.
Yeah,
he's...
So my question though is, for someone that wants to be at peak performance, what do you think is the optimal age in terms of human life expectancy? If you do what you do, can you live up to 150, for example, let's say? Is it possible?
I think it is possible. We're not immortal, and I don't want to be immortal. We have a finite time on Earth, and then I want to live life everlasting. Mm-hmm. So I'm not immortal. There's no humans that are immortal. But yeah, I think it's certainly beyond the realm of possibility that people can live to 130, 150, maybe even longer.
Really?
But I think it's getting more difficult because the environment we live in is so toxic. The food that's grown in America is depleted of nutrients. We live in a toxic environment. The air we breathe is not always clean. 5G, these frequencies are disrupting normal vibrational frequencies and disrupting enzymatic pathways in biochemistry. But I think if you focus on and what we measure as kind of biological age and keep track of that, and I do that through vascular tests, through glycan age, and through a lot of these other kind of biological clocks, we can see that we can turn it back. I'm 51, but I've got the biological age of a 36, 38-year-old.
Wow.
And I think if you look at the telomere length, which is another readout, which is dependent upon the body's ability to produce nitric oxide, then we can extend telomere length. And nitric oxide is what mobilizes our own stem cells. So as long as we're making sufficient nitric oxide, it's telling our own resident stem cells, hey, if you've got some zombie cells, some dysfunctional cells, we need to go repair and replace those dysfunctional cells. So as long we're continuing wearing ourselves out, we just got to replace those dysfunctional cells with functional cells, and that's due to stem cells, and the mobilization of stem cells is dependent upon nitric oxide production.
And in that case, is Y-stem therapy something you would do as well? Is that something you would recommend?
Absolutely. I've had my own stem cells banked. Now I have an unlimited supply of stem cells that, every 6 months I'll go get my own
That's awesome.
stem cells infused. And I think and I'm about to do it to my kids who are 16 and 14.
Uh-huh.
Because now the technology exists where we can take autologous stem cells, fat-derived, bone marrow-derived, and then expand them and have an unlimited supply. I think about my dad in a car accident in 1984. If that were to happen today, and we had his stem cells banked, immediately upon the accident, we could take him in, do intrathecal injections at the site of injury, and he wouldn't be paralyzed.
Wow.
And that's the power of regenerative medicine and stem cells, and I think it's certainly the future. I have an unlimited supply, and God forbid I ever have an accident where I need stem cells, but I do it just as prophylactically and to be proactive.
So do you think the advancement of medicine in general it's continuing? We still haven't hit that kind of benchmark. It's going to continue to advance as we move forward. Or do you think it's capped?
No, look, we have so much to improve on, so the science is there, right? We know so much about basic biochemistry and cell biology and molecular medicine. The problem today is the application and the translation of that science into standard of care. And the reason for that is because there's so many powerful forces we're going up against. Because when you think of medicine as a business, there's no money in cure, right? Medicine is a business, and the goal of any business is to acquire as many customers as possible and keep them as long as possible, right? Lifetime value of that customer. Medicine is the best business on the planet, $1 trillion business. And so when you start to implement technologies and clinical care that gets people off prescription medications and now is allowing the body to do its job, give the body what it needs, remove from the body what it doesn't need, that's disrupting a $1 trillion industry. And Big Pharma is so against that. So there are cures out there, but again, there's no money in cures. But it's what's best for mankind. And that's been my guiding principle is let's do what's right. Let's give the body what it needs. And if you do what's right, the cash register rings. But I'm not out there to try to ring the cash register. I'm out there to try to make discoveries, get to the root cause of chronic disease in humans, and allow the body to heal itself.
I love that. Having said what you've said, I thought about something too. And it's funny because I'm 27, by the way. So when I go on social media, the algorithm's always doing its thing, right? And I've noticed that I've seen a lot of ads for testosterone. And I did my blood work as well done. Everything was great. My testosterone levels were phenomenal. But I'm thinking to my head, I'm like, well, clearly if they're advertising for my specific age, right? Because you can target anyone you want in an ad. There's people my age that are suffering from low testosterone.
Absolutely.
How and why?
Well, look, we're exposed to so many hormone disruptors in shampoo, in fragrances, in soaps, in things we put in and on our body that are completely disrupting normal endocrine function, and it's a toxic world. So yeah, we've seen, you got kids that are 18, 20-year-old that have a biological age of a 50 or 60-year-old.
That's crazy.
And the kids today, 20-year-old kids, if you look back 100 years ago, the testosterone levels of a 70-year-old 100 years ago are higher than 20-year-olds today.
Wow.
So we're seeing this steadily in the demasculization of men, and it's a serious problem. And so we have to understand what's causing this disruption. And, nitric oxide is just one piece of the puzzle. It's not going to fix a testosterone deficiency or an estrogen deficiency in women. But these are all hormones that talk to one another. And so it gets back to the basics of give the body what it needs, remove from the body what it doesn't need, but pay attention to what you're putting in and on your body. And we have to get back to the basics of biochemistry and physiology and how we look at patients and how we treat patients.
What's something you recommend for someone that's 21, 22. That's kind of in that area of low testosterone that they could do it. Not taking something prescription or anything like that.
Well, hopefully your testicles are still making testosterone. So what I try to do is let's figure out how do we increase human growth hormone. Because human growth hormone will stimulate testosterone production in the testes, and then we kind of go up to the basics, right? So, intermittent fasting, high intensity interval training, all that will stimulate human growth hormone release and do it naturally. But you got to get a full hormone panel and figure out where's the break in communication, and then address that. But I think it's different for everybody. But if you need hormone replacement therapy, I think the younger you start that process, the worse. Because when you start giving exogenous testosterone, it completely shuts down endogenous production. You get testicular atrophy, and now you're dependent upon that testosterone shot or pellets or how you're delivering it for the rest of your life. Because the longer you take it, the testicular production of testosterone is completely shut down.
I like how you said that, the break of communication. That's a really beautiful way of putting it whenever your body, because our body pretty much works in unison, right? There's obviously something there that we're going to feel there's something off. So what's the overall plan with you in general, with your life, your goals in the next 10, 15 years of what you want to do?
My objective hasn't changed for the past 20 years. It's to educate and inform on the importance of nitric oxide to everybody around the world. Because I think I know that once people understand how important this one molecule is and understand what they may be doing to inhibit its production and understand what they can do to promote its production, it's life-changing. People that have chronic high blood pressure, they take steps to restore nitric oxide, they get off blood pressure medicine. Their diabetes is resolved. Their Alzheimer's and dementia, they're starting to get better perfusion of the brain.
Wow.
Their inflammation is resolved. Just focusing on a single molecule. And that's, I tell people it's not a panacea, it's not a silver bullet, but your body cannot and will not heal or perform optimally without nitric oxide. So, my goal is to continue to innovate in drug technology, product technology, and bring safe and effective nitric oxide-based products to the market so it's in the hands of everybody around the world.
And if someone wants to buy it from you specifically, where can they go?
Yeah, well, we have a website called n101.com. That's the letter N, the number 1, the letter O, number 1.com. That's our products. But I try to tell people, just get informed and get educated. I try to send people to my YouTube channel. We'll have interviews like this, and it's education. Education is the key. Knowledge is power, but it's only power if you utilize it and you put it to action.
Absolutely.
Right? So, ignorance is curable, right? And ignorance is just a lack of knowledge. So my job is to cure the ignorance around the world and empower patients and people to take control of their own health, because it's clear to me that doctors and prescription medications aren't making anybody better. We have to empower the patient to understand their own physiology, understand what they're doing that's disrupting the normal metabolism, hormone secretion, nitric oxide production, and address it.
Incredible. I know we're a little over on time now, but for anyone watching, what would be kind of your closing statement that you would like to end with?
Understand, so I tell people there's only 2 people in the world who need nitric oxide. There's the people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired, where conventional medicine has failed them. You need nitric oxide. And there's people like us who are, well, you're relatively younger than I am, but that are healthy and trying not to get sick. You need nitric oxide. So there's no need to test. There's no need to measure. I've been taking it for 20 years, but more importantly, give your body what it needs to make nitric oxide on its own. Moderate physical exercise, eliminate sugar, get rid of fluoride, mouthwash, and acids, and then get out of the way of the human body. But understand what nitric oxide is, understand what nitric oxide does, and then take action.
Brother, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for this podcast. I'll see you guys in the next one.